corpus. How many people know what this is? Right? Okay. It's kind of like a term that gets thrown around. You hear it, but you're kind of like, what does it mean? And so the great writ of habeas corpus is a fundamental right in the Constitution that protects against unlawful and indefinite imprisonment. And so this is basically when you're arrested, they have to produce why they arrested you. What's the evidence against you? And if they don't have any evidence, then they have to let you go. And this is such a fundamental right, and it's so important that our founding fathers did not include it in the Bill of Rights. They included it in the Constitution. And it's set forth in Article 1 in our Constitution. And so it is one of it's one of the most fundamental rights that we have as the United States, and really makes us, is what differentiates us from other countries. The Military Commissions Act. It eliminates habeas corpus for non-citizens. It undermines the Constitution and the rule of law. It makes the president both judge and jury. And it rejects our core American values. And this weekend I was reading in the paper a letter to the editor, and they weren't talking about the Military Commissions Act, but they were talking about free speech, and they had a really great quote that I wanted to share with you about making the president both judge and jury, and I'll get into a little bit more as to why the Military Commissions Act does this. But the quote is, "To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public." And so this is where the president is wrong, where when he went to Congress and he mandated that they pass a law that allows for torture, that allows for indefinite detention, that allows for the elimination of habeas corpus, this is where he is wrong, and we can't stand by him on this decision. And it rejects our core American values. I mean, habeas corpus, like I said, differentiates us from other countries. You know, we have a right to have our day in court, we have a right to have due process. And we stand for freedom and fairness. And so by eliminating habeas corpus, it makes us no better than the people that we are fighting against the terrorists. So a little bit of background information on the MCA, on the Military Commissions Act. As Bill said, there was a Hamdan decision, and so that's what started it. But after 9/11, the Bush administration captured and incarcerated terrorists and labeled them as quote-unquote enemy combatants. There's been about 750 people that have gone through Guantanamo Bay, but there are about 400 right now that are there. And 140 of them, the administration has admitted that they are either being held there with they're no threat to the United States, or they're being held by mistake. And so the other people, a lot of the other detainees are of course not given their habeas corpus rights, their due process rights. They are being charged, they were being charged in these military commissions courts without having any of the evidence presented to them. And so that's what spawned the Hamdan case, which said that the military commissions that they were using to try Hamdan and others was unfair because they were not allowed to be presented their evidence. They weren't allowed to be present at the proceedings. And so the Supreme Court ruled that the Supreme Court ruled that the military commissions that they were being applied did not follow suit with the U.S. Military Uniform Court of Justice, nor did it follow the Geneva Convention's Article 3, which guarantees certain rights to prisoners. So they said that unless Congress mandates that this can be allowed, then it can't. So Congress then passed the Military Commissions Act of 2006. And now with the Military Commissions Act and under it, people can be imprisoned indefinitely without charge or legal justification. They can deny detainees any court review of their imprisonment. They can hand down convictions based on evidence literally beaten out of witnesses. And they have redefined torture and abuses as they see fit, without regards for the Geneva Conventions or other human rights laws. And so the ACLU, not only as soon as the act was passed did we come out against it, but we've also been calling for the closure of Guantanamo Bay, which recently there has been efforts in Congress to actually move towards that, and there's been legislation introduced to have that. Legislation has been introduced calling on our president to close Guantanamo Bay within 120 days. So once it's passed and signed into law, it would give us 120 days to actually close the facility down. So, how does the Military Commissions Act take away habeas corpus rights? Well, in Section 6 of the Military Commissions Act, It strips any non-citizen declared a quote-unquote enemy combatant by the president of the right to be heard in the court or to establish his or her innocence regardless of how long he or she is being held without charge. So any non-citizen, our president can define as an enemy combatant. They can be picked up off the street and they can be detained indefinitely without any due process rights. And so not only are we seeing this here in the United States, but also in other countries where I don't know if anybody have heard of extraordinary rendition. It's where people are being picked up off the street in other countries and taken by the US into other countries that allow torture and are being tortured. And this is where this quote-unquote evidence then can be applied to somebody like here in the United States who's a non-citizen. And so that is how it strips us of habeas corpus, or that's how the Military Commissions Act strips us of habeas corpus rights. And so what is our plan? The ACLU, as well as several other national organizations, have introduced, or have called on Congress to introduce, and has been introduced, Restore the Constitution Act of 2007. And this is House Bill is 1450 and Senate Bill 576. And if this were to pass, this is kind of our dream. You know, we could have all the reforms that we wanted to the Military Commissions Act. It would end the indefinite detention. It would make clear that the Constitution is the law of the land. And it would ensure that government and top officials are held accountable for their actions. And then there's the Habeas Corpus Restoration Act. And so this is, if we can't get all the reforms that we want to the Military Commissions Act, this is kind of what's second best. If anything, we just want to restore habeas corpus. And so restoring our fundamental American values, and it protects against unlawful detention. And so that's, we actually are very pleased, I'm very pleased to say that Senator Salazar, Diana DeGette, and Udall, as well as Perlmutter, have all signed on to be co-sponsors of this piece of legislation. Now, the Restore the Constitution Act, none of our Colorado elected officials have signed on to be co-sponsors of that. And so that's something that we, of course, would encourage you to contact your elected officials and ask them to be co-sponsors. And I'm sure that if you're in the Common Cause section, they'll tell you more about that. So what can you do to help? We've started this really cool campaign. It's called Find Habeas Corpus. And so everybody got one of these sheets right here. And so what I was passing around to you was the signature of the petition that you all signed. And so we actually have that online. And we're trying to gather 100,000 signatures to present before Congress on June 26th for our National Day of Action. And so, of course, tonight when you sign that, that'll be a part of it. But also, please get online and forward it to your friends and help us collect petitions. You can put a web badge on your website. If you go to findhabeas.com, this is where you can get all this information. You can download door little hangers as well as postcards and little stickers. And this is just kind of, what we call a viral campaign. And so it's just, you put it somewhere where it's going to be seen. So maybe it's like a poster board at a coffee shop, or just somewhere where, people will see, they'll say, find habeas, I wonder what that is. And then they'll go to the website. If you're on MySpace, you can invite Mr. Habeas to be your friend. And if you have a blog, you can add this blog to your blog. So I really encourage everybody to get involved with the Find Habeas campaign.